Good evening, yeah, welcome to e-Xcerpt Friday by the e-Ananse Library. Today I'm your guest reader, I am Afua Acheampong, and the book we'll be reading today is Changes, a Love Story by Ama Ata Aidoo. So before we get into today's excerpt, I'll be reading a blurb of the book and share with you a bit of who Ama Ata Aidoo is. Essie said she would like some freedom from her demanding husband. She wants to focus on her career. So attracted to the illusion of independence that polygamy offers, she divorces her husband and becomes Ali Konde's second wife. Essie's best friend Opokuya struggles to manage the demands of her job and family. Fusena gave up her ambitions for a career to marry Ali and raise their family. Then her fears about the education gap in their marriage are realized when Ali takes a second wife. Aidoo's educated women maintain strong connections to their traditional roots and values, but they also take full advantage of the opportunities that education presents to transform their roles in Ghanaian society. Ama Ata Aidoo is a master of poetry and prose, and she utilizes these to stunning effects in changes, weaving a tension-filled, classic African story of change and tradition. The novel is groundbreaking in its portrayal of the joys and struggles of a new African womanhood. It is powerful, witty, and entertaining. So a bit about who Ama Ata Aidoo is if you don't know who she is. Ama Ata Aidoo is one of Africa's leading writers. She was born and educated in Ghana. She's the author of numerous books including Our Sister Killjoy, Changes, what we are about to read, and The Girl Who Can. She has also published 2 collections of poetry and authored poems and short stories for children, including The Days. She has taught at several universities around the world, including Brown University in the United States. She is the founder and executive director of e-Ananse Foundation. So now I'm about to take you on the excerpt that we have for today. One thing Ghanaians are good at is simply turning English down on its head. A waiter brought them their orders, and while Essie swallowed large gulps of her beer, Opokuya took rapid sips of her tea, almost as if she was afraid that leaving it standing for a second would cool beyond its rescue. You and your tea, Essie teased her kindly. Well, you know what my life is. How would I cope without tea, eh? You, Opokuya, cope? Essie thought that she hadn't ever heard anything so ridiculous before. You know you would cope in any situation, tea or no tea. I'll ignore that. Maybe in the eyes of a loyal friend, I look prosperous, she added a little bitterly. Essie opened her mouth to say something. Opokuya stopped her and just went on to remind her that the days when being fat was a sign of prosperity and contentment are long over. You and I know that these days, the only fat people in the world are poor, uneducated women in the so-called third world and unhappy sex-starved women in the more affluent societies who are supposed to eat for consolation. By the time Opokuya had finished her speech, Essie was laughing so much her eyes were swimming in unshed tears. But, Essie, why would you say that at least I have kept my marriage? What's wrong with yours? The question was unexpected, but should not have been. Essie paused for the minute's moment. Then she said rather quietly, Opokuya, I have left Uko. It was like the booming of a cannon into the evening. Essie, what do you mean? Just that. I have left him. Absolutely unsure of how to handle the moment, Opokuya seized on the banal. How can you leave him after all he has been living with you in your bungalow? Opokuya, don't be funny. You know that leaving a man does not always mean that it's the woman who has to get out of the house. I don't know anything. So how did you leave Oko? Essie was surprised by how much had happened in the month or so since that Monday when, following their latest argument, Oko had jumped on her. She decided to feel assaulted And from then on, her mind had seized on the assault and held it. Part of his fascination for her was its legal usefulness. She was clever enough to know, if only subconsciously at that stage, that it could come in handy should she ever decide to apply for a proper divorce. Meanwhile, from the evening of that same day, Oko had done all he could to get her to see that, in fact, he had jumped on her because he loved her, and that it had been part of his decision to give the relationship a second chance. Essie had not only refused to be convinced, but in fact got angrier and angrier. And the harder he tried to explain, in any case, she had not thought that it's necessary. In the days that followed, to change the decision to leave him. Of course, she was aware that although the incident was not only the cause of disaffection, it had helped her to make up her mind. Essie, I am so sorry. Opokuya cuts into Essie's thought. Why? Opoku, that marriage was not working. Essie, I am so sorry. So sorry. They were quiet for a while. Then they started to ask about one another's children. Essie wanted to know where Opokuya's children were in school and what they were doing. And Opokuya wanted to know about Ojanowa. According to both mothers, all the children were fine, and Ojanowa was at Oko's mother's. Permanently? Oh no, until the end of August. Then she'll come back to me for the reopening of school. How old is she? 6. She's in primary 1 this year. Already, but of course. She was born about the time I had my last born. No? Yes, time does fly. It does. The sadness that had descended on them was not proven easy to get rid of. They even went back to what they should have tried to find out from one another when they first met at the hotel. What were they doing at the Hotel 20th Century? Essie told Opokuya about the friend she was supposed to be meeting from abroad, and Opokuya told Essie about the arrangements for Kubi to collect her from the hotel. So you and your husband have taken to dropping into the 20th century for drinks? Essie made a great attempt to tease Opokuya. Opokuya went on to tell Essie about the trip she was planning to her mother's. Homesick? Essie asked, trying hard to keep her teasing tone. Yes, Opokuya answered, too enthusiastically, and fell into Essie's trap. Oh, Opoku, shame on you. At your age, now you stop it. I miss my mother. You know I haven't seen her for a long time. I didn't know. And I miss the feeling of being special with someone. You are very special with Kubi. Essie, you were very special with Oko. Essie did not know how to answer that. In the silence that followed, each woman was thinking that clearly the best husband always seems to be the one some other woman is living with. The sadness returned, heavier than before. One reason why Essie was almost tongue-tied was that she was too aware that Opokuya was her last hope of gaining understanding or at least sympathy for her point of view. So far, nobody to whom she had tried to state her case had been remotely sympathetic. Like her mother and grandmother, she had driven home one Sunday morning to discuss the whole business with them. They had found it very hard to listen to her at all, although they had tried. When Nana's patience had been stretched beyond endurance, she asked Essie to tell her truthfully whether the problem was that her husband beat her. No, Nana. So does your husband smell? His body? His mouth? Essie couldn't help laughing. No, Nana. In fact, for a man, he's very clean and very orderly. So then, listen. Does he deny you money, expecting you to use your earnings to keep the house, feed him, and clothe him too? Nana, we are not rich, but money is not a big problem. What is the problem? Both her grandmother and her mother screamed like this time. The former with her walking stick raised as though to strike her, and the latter bursting into tears. Essie had to tell the truth. Her husband wanted too much of her and her time. No, it was not another woman. In fact, She thought she might have welcomed that even more. Are you mad? The older woman looked at AC, and she looked at them. How could she tell them that she did not want to go? Where was she going to get a man like him again? At the end of the discussion, her grandmother had told her that the matter sounded too much for her ears. She didn't want to hear any more of it, at least not for some time. The declaration was accompanied by a proper palm rubbing gesture. Finally, as AC got into her car to drive back to Accra, and almost for a farewell, her mother had called her a fool. She had driven to Accra feeling like one. As for Oko's people, there was never a question of AC talking to them. She was convinced they hated her. She knew that for some time his aunt has been trying to get him a woman, a proper wife. What had discouraged them was his lack of enthusiasm and the fact that they suspected AC didn't care one way or the other. The purpose of the project had been twofold: to get him to make more children, because his lady wife appeared to be very satisfied with only one child. A terrible mistake, a dangerous situation. They also wanted to hurt AC very badly if they could. And if she didn't care one way or another, there was no point to it, was there? As far as AC was concerned, his sisters were no better. They used to come and insinuate that their brother was failing in his duties to the family because she had turned his head with something. She fried it with the breakfast eggs. She put it into the cakes, and they would whisper and laugh. As far as the sisters were concerned, Oko never had money to spend on them because he was busy wasting his salary on her. When AC let it be known that, in fact, she earned more than he did, their new line of attack was that it served him right, marrying a woman who had more money than him. His wife could never respect him. It was also around this time that the hints began to drop here and there about the need for him to get himself an unspoiled young woman, properly brought up, whose eyes had not jumped over her eyebrows, with too much education and too much money of her own. No, she couldn't go to them. As a result of Acey's growing uncertainty about the justification of her decision, she was hesitating to tell Opokuya her story. And since any hesitation with communication was itself a new development in their relationship, it too was creating its own nervous tensions in her. If Opokuya was her last hope of getting an understanding at all, then she had better not let go of her. For here, when no one ever made the mistake of thinking that any marriage was strictly the affair of two people involved, no one could ever attempt to fight any war in a marriage alone. And if she lost, Opokuya too, she would have to fight alone. Before Opokuya moved into Accra recently, she and AC had once before lived in the same town since they were in the same secondary school. It was when AC and Oko were first married and AC returned with Oko to Kumasi, where he had been teaching. Kubi was then an assistant surveyor and Opokuya was still a midwife at the Central Hospital. At the time, neither of them had any marital problems to share. Of course, Opokuya as usual sounded as if she had plenty. But then, as some of her colleagues always said unkindly, Opokuya searched for problems to talk about so that she too would sound just like any other wife. As for Issy, she was then expecting her baby and was too recently married to be aware of problems even if there had been many. After her baby was born, Issy had wanted to return to work, but that had not been easy. She had to face the difficulty of having to choose between two not so attractive options. She could stay on at Kumasi, but that meant she would not be working at all or not meaningfully. It was not every government department that had regional branches. The Department of Urban Statistics was one of those that didn't. Or she could return to Accra for her regular job as long as she first convinced Oko that they could still see one another as often as possible, at weekends either going or coming. But at the merest hint of that, Oko had made it clear that the subject wasn't even up for discussion. He made it clear that as far as he was concerned, they had done enough of that kind of traveling when they were just friends. In fact, he had thought one reason why they had got married was to give themselves the chance to be properly together. No? In the end, the only option left her, which she had to take, was to be seconded to the Regional Consensus Coordinating Office. She had ended up keeping the birth and death register. Surely, one doesn't need a master's degree in statistics to do that. She would fume and rage daily. Oko ignored her complaints. The truth was that he didn't feel that sympathetic, and neither did the men in the office. In fact, they let her know that she was unwelcome and a burden they did not know what to do with. Having to deal with a man who is overqualified for a job is bad enough. To have to cope with an overqualified woman in any situation is a complete misfortune. Now, 6 years later, both she and Opokia were here in Accra and working. And if she had a marital problem, a big problem, she should just gather herself together and tell Opokia what she felt. If Opokia too could not understand her, then that was that. She would accept that she was just a fool, like her mother and her grandmother had said. After all, people change. Look at her. Essie had changed. If she now found Oko's attention so suffocating that she wanted very badly to split, then people change. There was a time when she had been made to fear the fact that, in fact, she would never marry. You've waited too long, Essie's mother had complained. Given your structure, you shouldn't have. The poor woman shared the popularly held belief that a young woman who is too tall, too thin, and has a flat tummy and flat behind and has slim chances of bearing children. The longer she waits after puberty, the slimmer those chances get. Essie's main problem was that she was easily bored, and no woman ever caught a man or held him by showing a lack of interest. Essie had known that she would have to work up some enthusiasm in her relationship with men. But how? She had kept asking herself. Now looking back, she didn't dare admit even to herself that perhaps what she had felt for Oko in the first years of their married life was gratitude more than anything else. Gratitude that in spite of herself, if he had persisted in courting her and marrying her. Not many women are this lucky, Essie could hear her grandmother's voice. And who told you that feeling grateful to a man is not enough reason to marry him? My lady, the world would die of surprise if every woman openly confessed the true reasons why she married a certain man. These days, young people don't seem to know why they marry or should marry. What are some of the reasons, Nana? Ah, so you want to know. Essie, we know that we all marry to have children. But Nana, that's such an old and worn out idea. Children can be born to people who are not married. Sure, but to help them grow up well, children need home with walls, a roof fire, and pots. Oh, Nana, but one person can provide all these things these days for a growing child. Maybe. Yes, my lady. We also marry to increase the number of people with whom we can share the joys and pains of this life. Nana, how about love? Love is not safe, my lady Silk. Love is dangerous. It's deceitfully sweet like the wine from a fresh palm tree at dawn. Love is fine for singing about love, and love songs are good to listen to, sometimes even dance to. But when we need to count on human strength, and when we have to count pennies for food for our stomachs and clothes for our backs, love is nothing. Ah, my lady, the last man any woman should think of marrying is the man she loves. So this is where we end except for today. It's been a really interesting session. This is a really great book that really explores a lot of things about women, and it's very relevant to our situation today. So I'd like to thank e-Ananse for the opportunity, and look out for the next guest reader. Thank you.